Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Mary and I crochet while listening to audiobooks, and this is my 2023 wrap up. So, one of the first books that I read this year was Hokuloa Road by Elizabeth Hand, and I crocheted this Plumeria lay by Once Upon a Cheerio while I did. And this book just did not do it for me. I gave it 2 stars. I appreciated that it went into the less glamorous side of living in Hawaii and how it's different for white immigrants and natives, but the story itself just did not grab me. Something that did grab me, though, was the last book in the Whiskey Business Murder Mystery series by Melinda Mullet called Dyed in the Wool. And this was not the best in the series, but I still gave it 4 stars. And while I listened to it, I made this cute Bobble sheep pattern by Jen Hayes Creations on Ravelry. Then I listened to the Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline, and I crocheted this mandala that you see behind me. This was the Dreamcatcher Mandala Circular Vest pattern by Lavender Chair, and I just did the middle for kind of a little wall decoration. But the Marrow Thieves was fantastic. It's got great prose. It goes into the exploitation of Native people again, this time in Canada. It's a great kind of post-apocalyptic, I don't know if you'd call it a thriller, but something horrible has happened, and they think that the Native population is the only way to cure it or treat it. And of course, that's never good for the actual native populations. So I would give that one a read. I gave that 4.5 stars. And then Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. And if you've seen the cover of the book, I made these devil horns by Kala Hotukainen. I hope I pronounced that right, on Ravelry. And I liked this book. It asked, what if everyone knew Soylent Green was people? I think it was probably deeper than what I was reading. I gave it a 3-star. I think if I were analyzing this for a class or something, I would have enjoyed it more. But just as a casual read, interesting little post-apocalyptic, I don't think I'd call it a thriller, but post-apocalyptic slice of life world. And my first 5-star read of the year was Sign Here by Claudia Lux. And I made this little mini devil amigurumi by Jonas Matthias on Ravelry. And this was everything I could possibly ask for in a book about making deals with the devil. It was lighthearted and fun, of course, exactly what you'd expect. But it also captivated me. I loved all the characters, the people who were already in hell, and the people that they were watching on Earth. So again, that one was 5 stars for me, and I would recommend that one. And one that's outside of my normal wheelhouse, but that I actually ended up enjoying was Winter's Orbit by Evelina Maxwell. And while reading those, I made the original pattern was Hearts of Ukraine by Tatiana Kusherovska. And this book is out of my wheelhouse because it was romance. I was sold on the sci-fi elements and the murder mystery elements, and the murder mystery doesn't really come in till about 60% of the way through the book, but to my own surprise, I ended up kind of enjoying the romance elements. Who would have ever thought? So I gave that one 3.75 stars, and I would recommend it if you want a sweet, cute, LGBTQ romance in an idealistic utopian future. And then Clifford D. Simack wrote The City. It is classic sci-fi. And while I read or listened to that, I made Dog in Beret by Amigurumi today. And I thought there were more talking dogs. That was one of the selling points. I also thought there was more robots and alternate dimensions, and all of those are elements, but it's really a short story collection that has to do with humanity and what makes us human, and how much can we change and still be human, and should we stay human if we have a choice to change? So, very thought-provoking, love classic sci-fi. Also, Clifford D. Simack has really great prose without being overly sentimental or flowery, which is not something you see in a lot of classic sci-fi. So that was a really great surprise. And then we have Last Ones Left Alive. This is an Irish post-apocalyptic zombie tale by Sarah Davis Goff, and while listening to that, I crocheted this Irish flag drink cozy by Shelby Goddard on Ravelry again, and I was snowed in, so I needed something that took up very little yarn in the colors that I had, so I was very lucky. And it's also a very short book. It's a debut, but I would never have known it was a debut. It was so good. And the zombies are actually hard to kill. And again, it has really good representation for same-sex intimacy and relationships without being the focus. They're just a regular family, and it's great. So that one I gave 4.5 stars. And if you want a short zombie popcorn flick type thing, then I would definitely recommend that one. And one of the disappointments this month was The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. This is a short story collection, and some of the stories were great, but I didn't really feel connected to the collection as a whole. Often someone like Ted Chiang is one of my favorite short story science fiction authors, and his stories all work together or separately. But Jennifer Egan's, it felt like the collection was less than the sum of its parts. So while some of them were good, most of them were meh or even just like a little bit depressing. But yeah, I gave it 2.5. I'm glad I didn't DNF it, even though I was thinking about it. If you've seen the cover of The Candy House, it's very colorful with these lines that go all through it. So I crocheted a Tunisian simple stitch scarf with some colorful fringe on the end there. And my biggest project and biggest book this month that I am still working on is this Afghan from Crystals and Crochet. It's called the Sacred Spaces blanket, and I really liked these. They look like dragon scales to me, so I crocheted this while listening to Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin, and I was not a Game of Thrones fan. I got sucked in to the House of the Dragon, and I really liked the very plain prose of this, quote, history book, as opposed to a lot of fantasy. The prose can feel very self-indulgent to me, and that's just not my favorite kind of writing style. So I will continue to work on that. I checked out The Rise of the Dragon from the library as well, so I'll keep working on that Reds and Greens Afghan while I listen to that one as well. Some other things that I listened to this month that did not have crochet inspiration. One of them was Dead Mountain by Donnie Eichar, and that's about the Dyatlov Pass incident, and I gave that one 3 stars. One great courses lecture that I really enjoyed was How Great Science Fiction Works by Gary K. Wolfe, and I gave that one 4.25 stars. It didn't have a lot of new information because I've been reading sci-fi since I was young, but it did help me realize how being a sci-fi reader at a young age shaped my outlook on life. Things like the slingshot ending, that's very common in classic sci-fi. And that's where the end is just the beginning to another story. And that's a lot of the time how I look at life. Every ending is the beginning to something completely new and potentially amazing. So that was informative. And then Being Human, Life Lessons from the Frontiers of Science was another great courses lecture that I listened to this month by Robert M. Sapolsky. And that one I gave 4 stars to, and it had a lot of really good information I was able to instantly integrate into how I look at the world and how I behave in various situations. So I would recommend that one, and it's only, I think, 3.5 hours. It's much shorter than most of the great courses lectures. Then I listened to The Half-Life of Marie Curie. This is a play about the time between her first and second Nobel Prizes when she's embroiled in scandal, and largely it's about women making their way in a male-dominated world and friendship. And it has Kate Mulgrew, so of course it's amazing. That one was by Lauren Gunderson, and I gave that 3.5 stars. Then, I don't care if it counts or not, everyone who's ever seen Doctor Who needs to listen to the Big Finish audio adventures, so I'm including it. The Doctor Who Time Works story by Steve Lyons is featuring the 8th Doctor, and it was just a good time to listen to. I think I listened to this one on January 1st, and they're just fun little about 2.5 hour, 2 hour adventures if you want to step back into that world, and many of them are free on Spotify. So if you're a sci-fi, a BBC, or a Doctor Who fan, check out Big Finish audio adventures. So Time Works by Steve Lyons, 4.5 stars. So that was everything that I finished and listened to, and most of my crocheted creations from the month of January 2023. I hope that you are having an amazing weekend, you have an amazing February and rest of your year, and just remember to breathe and keep your head up.